Hi, and welcome to this video on how to study. This one is about the SQR3 method, and it'll be the first in a series of videos on how to study. Um, this first one on the SQR3 method kind of gives you a brief overview, and then any further videos that we'll have will be just more in-depth look at different topics, items, concepts about this method. The SQR3 method is a pretty old method. I mean, it's the grandfather of all of the learning methods. Um, it's been around for ages and at least 50, 60 years. Okay, and today's learning methods, in some way, shape, or form, are just derivatives. Very, takes off on this SQR3 method. It's a it's a pretty effective learning method. It does have some steps, and it does seem like you're doing a lot um, because we all have a tendency to just open up the book, and then just start reading. And we read, and sometimes we'll take a note. We don't have any idea what kind of notes we should be taking, but we take them anyways. And then we just dive right in and try to take a test. And that's not how you learn. Okay, um, learning is about repetition. So the SQR3 method, it's based upon repetition being the mother of all learning. I mean, we've all heard about repetition, and we've heard this saying, okay? And the SQR3 method is an acronym for scan, question, and then the R3 is read, recite, and review. And you'll see that by going through these here steps, you're going to be using repetition. I mean, you're going to scan, that's repetition. You're going to question, you're going to make the material active. Then you're going to read and recite, that's another repetition. You're going to make notes, that's repetition. And then you're going to review again, that's repetition. Okay? And it might seem like it's a lot, but it really isn't. And you'll see where in the future you'll, well, I'm actually just going to go through a quick review of it so that you have some idea, you can physically see some of the steps. Okay, but some of the additional concepts for this method that I like to look at is, and these are probably topics for a future video. I'm actually going to add in note taking, note taking. Okay, so these are, that one just popped into my head, note taking right now. So that might be an additional, these will probably be additional videos for the future. But as I said, additional concepts, memorization. When we were in high school, um, the teacher would ask, would say, read this chapter. And the next day he'd ask how many people have read it. All right, and only 2 or 3 kids would raise their hand out of the class of 30. But because of high school, they have to push the kids through school, right? The teacher would stand in front of the classroom and repeat what was in the chapter, right? Because he has to, they have to cover the material and they have to push the kids through. I mean, you've seen the kid who failed and he fails and he fails. Well, they just keep on pushing them through because they can't have a 26-year-old in a, classroom with, 13 or 14-year-olds, okay? So in high school, the questions became more about memorization. Just learning was, repeat until you can memorize. There was no analytical thinking, and that's all high school thinking. Okay. On a higher level is understanding and application. Okay, the doing of something. This is the college level. When you go to college, you're paying for your education. It's your job to learn. It's not the teacher's job to teach. In high school, it was the teacher's job to teach, and the student, it wouldn't matter whether the students learned or not. Okay, those that did, went on to college. Those that didn't, took up trade or whatever. Okay, but in college, you're paying for the education. It's your job to learn. The teacher is only there to guide you, but it's not about memorization anymore. It's about understanding concepts and then can you apply them? Can you do it? Right? It's also about comprehension versus understanding. We read like a Sunday newspaper, and that's comprehension. Okay, but do you truly understand the material? That's a whole different thing. That's active learning. That's questioning. Again, these are additional concepts, and you'll probably see these ideas in other videos. Do I know this or don't I? All right, a lot of people spend their time repeating what they already know. Waste of time. Okay. And of course, note taking. Well, what should I be taking notes on? Okay, how should I take notes? You know, when I was in college, I spent 3 years studying how to study. You know, not, aside from my actual studies themselves. And I found what kind of worked for me, and everybody's different. You'll have to find what works for you, right? But one of the things, this is back in the 50s, the cone of learning, okay, by Edgar Dale. He came up with this here graph. And if you notice, 10% of what we read, and after 2 weeks, we tend to remember only 10% of what we read, 20% of what we hear, okay? Um, the nature of involvement is just passive, okay? You know, in high school, I read and I hear, right? You're not, after 2 weeks, you open that textbook, you just read it, and you're only going to remember 10 or 20% of it, all right? After 8 months, you remember nothing. And if you have to take proctor exams at the end of the semester, 6 or 8 months away, you're not going to remember any of it if you don't have some kind of repetition in there, okay? Just by the mere fact that we only remember 10 or 20%, okay? 30% when we look at pictures, okay? We have, after 2 weeks, we have a tendency to remember 50% of what we hear and see. Okay, so that's like watching a movie, watching a demonstration, seeing it done. Okay, and that also includes your speaking when you're reading. All right, because you use audio. All right, you're being active. Your body is actually doing something. Okay. 70% of what we say, participating in a discussion, giving a talk. Again, that's as you're studying, if you're speaking while you're reading and you're concentrating, you're going to have a tendency to retain more. 90% of what we say or do, it's if we actually, do a dramatic presentation or we do the real thing. Okay. What I kind of like, this here area is where the learning comes in. But if you're at home by yourself and you're saying, well, what can I do? How do I, participate in a discussion or give a talk? Think about when we learn best when we teach. Okay. So in the back of your mind, what you should be doing is yeah, as you're reading and learning and you're taking notes, whatever have you, you can also say to yourself, okay, if I were going to teach this, how would I do this? Okay, what would I say? What would I do? Actually maybe even create lessons, and speak as if you're going to teach it. And that brings in this here 70% of remembering. Now it seems like it's a lot to do, okay? It's, it really isn't that much when you get right down to it, okay? But that's how you stay actively involved with your materials. Okay, so what happens normally when we open up a book, okay, or when we have a book? Okay, here's a practical math, business math procedures textbook. It's the front cover of the current edition. And what happens is most people open this, they look in their study guide and it says read pages 1 to 35 or whatever. Okay. When you look at this cover, you have no idea what's inside that book. Your brain isn't prepared. Okay. So it can't compartmentalize it. It isn't given a heads up. It's not warmed up. It has no clue as to what's going to come about. And that's where the SQR3 method, scan, question, read, recite, and review, comes in. Okay. If I take the book, the very first thing I should be doing is I should be scanning. Okay. So if I open up the page, and now these are just bits and pieces from this textbook, so just bear with it. The whole idea is just to give you an idea how the flow of the SQR3 method works. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scan. Here's the table of contents. I don't need to read the whole table of contents. When I'm going to scan here, I'm going to see, this is what I'm looking at, all right? Whole numbers, dissect and solve, fractions, decimals, banking, solving for the unknown, percents, applications, discounts, trade and cash, markups. Okay, now my mind is a little bit more prepared, all right, just by looking at the table of contents like that. Okay, why? Well, I know what's inside the textbook. I know that I'm going to be dealing with whole numbers, fractions, decimals, banking, percents, okay? And now that means something in your mind. It prepares your mind for what's to come, okay? So as part of the scanning process, I'm going to continue on. I'm going to start leafing through the pages, okay, of what I'm assigned to read. Here's a page. What do I see on here? Oh, I see this here ad, you know, Google, okay? I see adding and subtracting decimals. Notice I'm not going to read this. I'm just scanning. And I see that there's an example here. I'm not going to dive right into the example, but, you know, the important thing that I got in my mind is, there's going to be adding, subtracting decimals, and there's going to be these here steps. My mind knows that's what I'm going to take in. Scan to the next, go to the next page and scan. I also have here multiplying, you know, decimals. Oh, another example, division of decimals. Okay, here was multiplication up in here. Um, Dividing decimals. Okay, I see this here. I know that's important. Here's another example. So on this page, my mind took in multiplication and division of decimals. I still didn't jump into the nitty gritty. Okay, but I'm scanning through it now, and it's preparing my mind. Now, let me go back up to there we go. So up here, you know, I was scanning through the pages just like that, quick and easy. You know, you're not spending more than a few seconds on each and every page. But as I'm going through, I'm going to start asking me questions. I'm going to start saying, well, okay, multiplication and division, you know, what could that be about? You know, oh, what does this, you know, chart about Google have to do with anything? Okay. Oh, I noticed that there's an example. I wonder what's in that example. Okay, you start asking yourself questions because in the back of your mind, you already have some knowledge. Okay, and the way our minds work is imagine a wall with Velcro on it. Okay, and on the wall there's some Velcro balls already. Okay, and here's a bucket next to you with Velcro. Okay, with Velcro balls in it. Well, each and every one of those balls is a bit of information, okay? And our brains like to link and associate. It has a difficult time with something that's very, very brand new. Like, for example, I'm not into marine biology, so that's like a totally new subject to me, and I'd have to start from scratch, and my mind would struggle because it doesn't have anything to associate with it, okay? But if, let's say, you know, I can boil an egg, okay? Well, you know, what happens if I need to boil some soup, okay? My mind can associate how to go about doing that because I need a pot, you know, I need to put it in the pot, I need to turn, you know, I did that with the egg. All I'm doing is just changing one of the ingredients. But if I had no clue on how to cook whatsoever, I had never seen it before, I wouldn't even know I need a pot, okay? And it becomes more of a struggle. So our minds like to associate with things that it already knows, and that's where the scanning and the questioning comes in. It allows your mind to begin to make those associations so that when you pick up the Velcro ball and you throw it against the wall, that information sticks in your mind. Now, sometimes that ball will bounce off, okay? I mean, we've seen that happen, and it's the same thing in your mind. You're not going to remember, you know, immediately, and that's where the repetition comes in. So we get to that point, and what we want to do then is we want to read. You know, we've gone scanned and questioned in our mind when we were scanning. Okay, now we go back. You know, and that should take just a few minutes, hardly any time at all. Okay, but it prepares our mind. Very, very important. Then we begin to read, and now we read in earnest. Um, we can read out loud. Okay, and the thing I like to do when I'm reading is I'm always asking, I keep in the back of my mind the question, do I know this or don't I? Um, that's why you saw this on right here. Okay, I'm always asking this question, do I know this or don't I? Because if I know it, why would I take a note on it? People like, you know, to take notes on things that they already know. I mean, think about it. If you're in your house, you know where the bathroom is, you don't have a problem. Your mind is not agitated. But if you go to go to a hotel you've never been before, and you have to go to the restroom, and you ask where it is, and they say, oh, it's down the hall. You know, make a left and go through that door down the hall, and then it's on the right. When you're walking along, you're not so sure. All right, your mind is a little bit agitated. Why? Because it's not familiar with it. It's familiar with the things, you know, that you know, But if you don't know it, it's not familiar, and your mind has a tendency to buck and kick. So we're more comfortable with the things we know. But a lot of people, they spend all their time taking notes on what they know, right? Waste big 80% waste of time, right? They need to always be asking the question, do I know this or don't I? Okay. And if you know it, skip it. If you don't know it, then go ahead and take the notes on it. Okay. So as you're reading, recite out loud. All right. Make the notes. Okay. And what you'll end up with is, several pages of notes. I mean, sometimes a lot of notes. Don't rewrite what's in the book. All right. You don't need to write down definitions. You might, want to write down an example or the gist. You put it in your own words because it's familiar to you. Okay. And once you have those pages of notes, okay, maybe you have, say, 5 pages of notes. Okay, 4, 5. All right, not unusual. Okay, but you give yourself a break, a day or two of break, so that your mind can digest it. At night, when we sleep, our mind processes all of the information that we've taken in during the course of the day. It's sort of like a bodybuilder. You exercise, your muscles get stronger when you sleep at night. Okay, when you're resting. Same thing with your mind. It takes in this information, and at night it finds those little compartments, it associates it, it puts everything together. Okay, so that the next day when you go to uh, give it a day or two, and you look at your notes and you review. Okay, the whole idea then is to rewrite your notes. Okay, rewrite all of those notes. And when you're rewriting those notes, you're asking yourself, do I know this or don't I? Okay, if you know it, skip it. If you don't, write it again. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to condense those notes, and maybe, by stuff you already knew from the repetitions, you say to yourself, oh yeah, okay, I know this because you repeated it enough. Now you're at a point where, oh, these are the only things I don't know. But notice you've gone through that repetition again. All right, give yourself a break a little bit, then review again. Instead of 3 pages, you're trying to get it down to 1 page. Okay, and when you get it down to 1 page, then you'll find that obviously you don't need to keep, just need to review that 1 page all the time, and eventually you'll get it. Especially if you have a proctor exam, a final exam, which you're not going to take, for quite a way down the road. Okay, you got to keep coming back to your notes and reviewing them in order to put it into long-term memory. Okay, so that's kind of how this works. Go back over this again. I realize it's a kind of a long video, all right, but again, it doesn't take that long to do it. I mean, as you saw me do this, here was the cover. Okay, I know this is about math. Oh, what's this? Oh, you know, what's important on this? What stands out, jumps out on this page? What do I know about this? What don't I know about this? Then go back and read the material, asking the questions, making your notes, and then review, and always try to condense your notes. Okay. And like I said, I'm going to make a few other videos that'll pretty much touch up on these additional concepts right here, and they'll be for future. So watch for those, and I might even put them over on the side as something that everybody can look at. All right. So I hope that helps you, and have a great day.